Agricultural, conservation, and environmental partners are working together to explore the health of these beautiful mountain meadows and provide awareness of this important habitat. Approximately 40% of meadows in the Sierra Nevada are privately owned, mostly utilized by ranchers raising livestock. Approximately 30 species of rare plants exist solely in Sierra meadows, and about 19 threatened or endangered species depend on meadow ecosystems for their survival. Private landowners play a very important role in the long-term care and management of these landscapes. Meadows are a very unique and important part of our ecosystem. Our water begins here at upper elevation mountain meadows. Meadows act like sponges and hold water longer. As the snow begins to melt in the late spring and early summer months, the water percolates down through the meadows and is released slowly into the streams. This water tends to be cooler when it's released and also is released over a longer period of time throughout the summer months.
Here at the Sierra Field Station, we have been doing research examining how meadows, riparian areas, wetlands can filter pollutants that are in runoff. Our findings from that study, if we look at E. coli, which is a microbial pollutant of concern in California, we find that in the functioning meadow, the functioning wetland, that we have as much as 90% of that E. coli is trapped and removed from the water. If we look at the impaired wetland, we're seeing that only 40% of the E. coli that's contributed to that wetland is trapped. The rest passes straight through. So the bottom line is that we need to maintain the hydrologic function of our meadows and wetlands and riparian areas in this landscape so that they can serve as a water quality improvement tool. In companion studies, we've also been looking at nitrogen and the role of these wetlands in sequestering nitrogen. And what we found is that we need to manage the vegetation in these meadows and wetlands so that the vegetation is maintained in a growth phase. And so defoliation, grazing by livestock is a great way to do that.
Sierra meadows are especially important for birds. There are quite a few bird species that depend on meadows for some part of their life cycle. Willow flycatchers in particular depend on willows for nesting. Yellow warblers nest in willows. Great gray owls hunt for meadow voles. And then there are several other species that for some part of the year depend on meadows. They're also important in the post-breeding season, so birds will nest at lower elevations but move up into the meadows before they depart on migration. So it's been recently discovered that that's another really important use for birds.
As the population continues to increase, so does the demand for water. Over the past 150 years, much of the hydrology of streams and rivers has changed, largely due to development, land use, and the need for water storage. Due to the altered state of our riverine systems, some streams and rivers have been separated from their meadow floodplain, and the result may be increased erosion, lack of water to the meadow flood area, flooding downstream, reduced quantity and quality of forage for livestock, increased invasive weeds, and reduced wildlife habitat.
We're excited to work with private landowners and explore options to assist them in enhancing their land. Hydrology, soils, and vegetation are interdependent in the meadow system, and this results in a diverse mosaic of habitats. During high water, the stream overflows its banks and spreads out onto the meadow floodplain. The water then percolates into the soil and replenishes groundwater. Without a high water table, meadow species die and are replaced by trees, shrubs, and other upland plants. In this eroded condition, floodwaters are contained by the stream banks, and they surge downstream instead of spreading out across the meadow and soaking in. People have been fighting soil erosion since the beginning of civilization. It has been a difficult nut to crack because once a gully starts, erosion is self-perpetuating.
All right, well, when these streams incise and downcut, you get these big banks here. They also drain the water. What little water does get on the meadow surface, it drains out through that side cut there. You can see the sagebrush there coming into the meadow, and that's really because of this cut here that causes that to be dry. In a restored state, that sagebrush wouldn't be able to live here. It'll be choked out by the wetness.
Meadow areas provide seasonal forage and water for livestock and are part of a year-round grazing regime, typically starting at lower elevations in the valley and foothill areas late fall, winter, and spring. As the feed dries up, some ranchers move their cattle to higher elevations, which include meadow areas. Scott and Patty Thompson raise cattle, and Red Clover Creek runs through their land. This creek was impaired from serious erosion problems, causing the meadow to dry out and the meadow vegetation to die. Then sagebrush moved in, and there was less forage for the cattle. The Thompsons decided to partner with a local watershed group to try and restore the creek and improve the condition of their land.
You can see that the sage here is dying off from the water table and the quantity of water that's close to the root zone now. For the most part, up until the line of willows there, this whole thing was solid sagebrush. Well, the greener and the better the quality of the forage it's going to be what the animals consume, and it's what's going to equate to pounds.
As the natural meadow conditions improve, so does the forage. The meadow areas now stay greener longer, which allows the cattle to safely come back and regraze the area later. The increase in forage quantity and forage quality make a big difference to ranchers. More forage usually equates to bigger animals and more pounds, which means more dollars when it comes time to sell.
And this location right here, there was nothing but sagebrush. There was no grass, no sedges, no reeds, nothing. As soon as the water came back, all these species that were basically hibernating in the soil dormant for the last 50 years came to life.
As you can see, meadows are an important part of the ecosystem and also provide an important function for private landowners. Working with these landowners is key for enhancing meadow health. There is technical and financial assistance available from the USDA, NRCS, and other state and federal grants. Although many private landowners utilize best management practices on their operations and their land, there are cost share programs available that can assist with off-stream watering facilities for livestock, cross-fencing, and improvements to irrigation for efficiency, to name a few. When meadow enhancement projects are being developed, it's important to consider any impacts to downstream water rights and also provide before and after monitoring. As we move forward, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and partners are committed to working with interested landowners in balancing grazing management and habitat restoration, and also to explore ways to reward landowners and provide incentives for their long-term care and good stewardship of the land.